So, how have things been in terms of realization, would you say?
Um,
Because I was just looking at the emails, and I think you wrote first in about July of last year.
yeah, I should. Yeah, somewhere around quite a like 6 months ago, maybe
Yes.
probably. I think. Um, I think it's simultaneously clear and unclear. Uh, I suppose the part of why I want the conversation is that I've never really talked to anyone about it in any way, so I kind of don't know, and the kind of thoughts and views just moves in all directions in different times, so it depends.
Yes.
Um, I mean, within my first email, I would say like effortless being has been seen, I think, clearly, but it seems like it moves very strongly between, and predominantly it is the mind and the personal veil, and it just becomes really hard because they have been, I understand that they're not always switches, but they have really clearly been switches in a way. And so it's really hard to reconcile the two different modes. And
Mm,
now when I feel like, oh, now I'm back in the person again,
mm.
it becomes a bit, well, I know it's not really true, but
Yeah.
it's just that it's all there is in a way. And then it's like, well, it plays on a very neurotic level where it's like, well, I can't write an email to David because then obviously I'm just perpetuating the whole thing. But then again, I'm just ending up not doing that, and then it spins and spins, and there
Yeah.
are alleviations and so on. So
Mm.
alleviations, what I mean, like it's clearer sometimes.
Yes.
Uh,
So you're clear on impersonal being then. So there's a, would you say there's a recognition in this moment that everything is arising within a field of awareness? Can you see it in that way?
yes, but I don't think it's impersonal in a way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, the conditioning we've had is certainly to make it seem as though it's personal, but
Okay.
it is actually always impersonal because, um, in terms of the koshas, um, there's just a noticing that the impersonal being precedes the personal mode. Well, let's take this moment. So there are forms known and forms being registered in impersonal awareness in this moment. And everything actually is always registered in personal awareness. So if we just take some examples, even experiences which seem to be personal. So we could say there's impersonal awareness of the headphones on the head.
Yeah.
There's impersonal awareness of the computer screen, impersonal awareness of the objects in the room. And so it's only that the the personal mode is adapted really as a result of the conditioning we've had. It's just that really from birth we've been conditioned into the personal mode. But if we just look at the simplicity, because effortless awareness is really, it's just the open space within which the forms appear. So they could be thought forms, or they could be emotions, or they could be physical forms. And they're just effortlessly known. So in any moment, there is just impersonal awareness, and then there are forms appearing within that. And we can experience them either impersonally or personally. So when we experience them impersonally, they're neutral because there's no judgment, there's no comparison. um, so it's just really seeing that they're arising very simply, innocently, and effortlessly. And then there's the personal mode, which is the personal mode is usually supplemented by either thought or language, which is in a personal mode. So if we take, well, the example of the headphones on the head, so we could say there is impersonal, effortless awareness of headphones on the head.
Yes.
Or there's the personal mode, which is, oh, I'm wearing my headphones on my head. And it's the one really is being seen neutrally, which is in the body of wisdom, which is effortless being. And then the dualistic version is the mental body, because with the mental body there tends to be a commentary accompanying.
So then, I mean, then I think it is actually. I think it's quite clear that it is impersonal then in a way. I guess because what tends to like how can I put it? I have to, of course, activate, the mind to talk about the contractions or whatever.
Sure.
So I mean, it's very clear, like in terms of what you're saying. I think it's clear, but I think like actually, coming into sort of this conversation, like how it plays, is a bit like the clearer it gets, the more or the body contracts.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
Does that make sense? So it's like,
Yes.
and I've had that happen at work where people ask me, "Hey, why you look so angry?" And I look at my webcam, I look angry, but I'm like, I actually feel, pretty spacious. I don't really mind, but
Yeah.
it's just that I seem that I get almost the opposite response.
Yes.
Does that make sense? Because I think, because in a way, I can not maybe scattering my mind too much, but I can see what you're saying and how I have to activate the mind to, create a problem out of it, or,
Yes.
to, it's very clear. The question in a way, I think, if we just remain sort of with what we said, is that to, it seems that there is the thought mode of thinking about the things, but the sense of the person is sort of different. And I think that's why I still feel like it's the sense that a person has it, if that
Yes.
makes sense. Like it's not that there is clear empty space and then there is the contraction. It's that this sense of this, like it's almost like the spaciousness is kind of the person in a way. Like it's not the knowing of it and the contraction. I don't know. Do I make any sense in what I'm saying?
Yeah, you do. It's really because there are two sources of intelligence, because there's the intelligence of your infinite nature, which is actually knowing everything. So it's impersonal awareness, which is just effortlessly aware. And if we just notice the forms appearing in this moment, where there's no judgment or commentary, we just notice the forms. So in any moment, there are forms arising in the moment. So we could say there's awareness of the body sitting on the seat, and the awareness of the two voices, the awareness of the objects in the room, and there could be sounds, perceptions, thoughts, experiences, emotions, and there's the option to experience them impersonally, which is where we just notice them neutrally, where we're not running a script, where it's just it's the simplest form of awareness in a way, because the awareness doesn't have the personal mode. It's just
Okay.
it's awareness without personalization. But the way you describe it's really very clear actually, because the dualistic mode is like an energy game.
Yeah.
And so where there's clarity, so the more clarity there is, in a way, the more the dualistic realm is trying to invite you back into the energy game. So that's what gives rise to the sense of contraction, because there's the there's the expansion resulting from impersonal being. But then the dualistic realm is aware of that, and then it's trying to invite you back into personalization. So that accounts for the way you describe it, actually, that the more spacious the more spaciousness there is in a way, the more intensely the dualistic realm is trying to reinforce personalization.
Yeah, I just would have assumed that it would be the other way almost, you know,
Yeah.
because I think, I mean, part of why I wanted to have a conversation is that I feel sometimes I wonder if it's not clear how clear it is, or if it's, it's like that said, like I've never spoken about it, so I just don't know. But
Yeah.
because I do experience, like
And
it
it,
feels like it contracts regardless of if it's personal or not. So if I put it this way, if I just sit down in like my armchair, for example, which I like doing,
Mm.
then it's fine. But it's fine, with the contractions. It's almost like there's something here that is, I don't know, it feels like I have to do something about it, right? And I know it like that seems to be like it isn't kind of true, but it seems kind of true because it feels a bit like being free within a straitjacket, if that makes sense in a sense.
Sure. Yeah.
It's a bit like, yeah, I'm free, but like if I don't care about anything and I'm fine with just sitting and staring into the wall, then yeah, I'm
Mm.
free and I can actually have a sense of well, I'm guessing it's
Yeah.
presence, the spaciousness, I guess.
Yes. Yeah.
Uh, but the moment, I just feel like if I take something, a good example, because you sometimes talk about your brother and making each day as joyful as
Yes.
possible.
Yeah.
Then what happens usually is that the mind contracts and starts spinning that how you would have to, for example, be a person in a way to take that statement. And it's it seems like it's correct, but it depends on how it is seen, if you know what I'm saying.
Yes.
It's like because it's a matter of where it's a resonance for the mind, right? In a sense, like it has to align, and that is like there's something here that isn't really clicking, if that makes sense. So it's um yeah, free in a straitjacket was a good thing of putting it actually.
Yes. Well, the truth is there is actually only freedom because um, when there's awareness of all the forms appearing equally and effortlessly, then we're seeing awareness as like an infinite ocean, an infinite impersonal ocean within which the forms appear. It's just that because the body mind has, it's like a piece of technology which has a particular sense of localization, then that seems to be predominating. But
Yeah,
actually, if you change the context and you just notice the forms, because when you were a little boy, there would have just been awareness of the different forms. So there would have been awareness of the the light coming through the window, much as there is in this moment, the awareness of the furniture in the room, awareness of family members, and awareness of the body mind, because the body mind the body mind in impersonal awareness is seen equally to everything else. And even in this moment, you can see it in that way because if you just look down and you look at the legs, there are the
yes,
legs of the body. There you could say there's effortless impersonal awareness of the legs, and then there's effortless impersonal awareness of the arm of the chair, and then there's effortless impersonal awareness of the floor and
yeah,
of the
yeah,
desk. So so it's only the conditioning we've had, the personalization and the language, which has kind of cast a spell of personalization, which makes it seem as though the body mind is more you than anything else. But actually, from your infinite nature, there's simply awareness of the various forms, and they're actually known equally and effortlessly. So the awareness of the ceiling, or the awareness of the light, or the awareness of the weight of the body in the seat, or awareness of the headphones on the head, um, they're all actually known equally. It's only that predominance has been given to the idea that you really are this body mind. And it's just the residue of that conditioning, really, which makes it seem as though it's freedom in a straitjacket. But the truth is that the body mind is just another form appearing within the infinite ocean. So the reason there's awareness of all the forms, so there's awareness of the body sitting on the seat, then there's awareness of the flooring, and then in the distance there's awareness of the table and chairs and the light coming through the window. And so awareness is everywhere. So it's knowing that you remain as that field, and everything appearing within awareness is appearing within you because you're this unified field of awareness, and everything can only arise because, well, by virtue of the fact that the awareness is the foundation, and then the forms appear as waves upon that. But they're all equally known in reality. So whatever the forms are, there are forms where we've
Yeah.
been conditioned to believe that they're impersonal, or not personal to you, like the sofa or the flooring or the light. And then the conditioning is saying, oh, yes, but the body mind's slightly different. That's definitely me. But really, when we just change the context and see that the body mind is like a piece of technology, and infinite awareness is the field within which all the forms appear. But it's also the awareness which is looking through the eyes of the body mind. So the awareness looking through the eyes never became the form.
Because
It's
I, sorry, go ahead.
no, okay, carry
No,
on.
it's just that I just like when you say everything arises equally, or what you said, because that's exactly what I feel about everything. So everything, in a sense, is a bit flat. I mean, I don't mean flat necessarily in a negative way, but
Hmm.
everything feels a bit,
Neutral.
yeah, um, like it's weird because like the intensity of something can vary, but it's always equal, if that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah.
That's, and I remember that was a thing that I was hung up on in a way, because I was like, well, it's obvious that this sensation is more than this, but there is an equality to, like, I guess the fact that it arises in a sense. If you, well, I don't know, not that need to, I don't know. That's an interesting way, but
Well, what you could say is that the in the so in the mental realm where we've been conditioned, it tends to be by comparison. So one comparison is saying, "Oh, this is me, but that's not me." And then there are certain things which we're grading. So we're grading certain things as being desirable. We prefer
yeah,
some things to others. The way it is in the body of wisdom, though, or effortless being, is that the foundation is neutrality in exactly the way you describe it. So there is simply effortless, impersonal, neutral awareness of all the forms, which does feel a bit flat because it's neutral and there's no sort of grade within that.
no drama.
Yeah, but actually there is a sort of ascending sequence in the body of wisdom, which is that you could say neutrality is the lowest level, and then the next level would probably be inspiration, where
Sorry, can you say that again? Am I blanked out for some reason?
so so the lowest level is neutrality.
Yeah,
So that's just effortless being. So there's effortless impersonal awareness of the various forms. So effortless impersonal awareness of the body, mind, effortless impersonal awareness of the items of furniture and of the light. But then the the way it actually rises or is structured within the body of wisdom or effortless being is that there are sort of rising frequencies. So the first one is inspiration. So from neutrality, there can be inspiration. So in the mental body, the mind would be saying, well, really what you need to do is this. You need to do some work, or you need to do something to make progress, or you need to get focused.
I know that one. Yeah,
So that's the one option. Um, but the one arising within the body of wisdom is a feeling of inspiration, which is actually a feeling of expansion. So if it's coming, you've probably heard me say this, but if it's coming from the dualistic realm, so if it's in the mental realm, it would be saying something where there's a feeling of contraction. So it would be saying, oh, you need to do some work this evening. You haven't done very much today, so you maybe need to do some work. And that can give rise to a feeling of contraction. But if there's a feeling of inspiration, so if there's something that you feel inspired to do, so maybe there's something you would like to just have a look at or research, or something you just need to make some notes to do with the cognition about something, that can give rise to a feeling of expansion. So that's really the distinction between effortless being and the mental realm, because the mental realm is the way you describe it. It can be just quite bland and quite well, just a feeling of contraction. But the in terms of effortless being, once you've established the neutrality in the way you describe it, which is it just things just feel quite even and even flat, um, then there
No,
can
sorry. It just sounded so negative when I described it as flat, but I don't even mean it negatively. It's just
no, it's good just to be honest, which is great, just saying it as it is really.
it
So
was
with the but the sequence which arises in effortless being is one which it goes through a sequence. So it goes from neutrality, then it usually goes to inspiration. So then it could be, well, it could be intuition first, actually. There could be an intuition which you wish to just explore. And then there could be inspiration. And then there could be more of a feeling of expansion, which results in some kind of creativity. So the motivation for action in impersonal being is inspiration rather than a concept.
I think, but I think this is somewhere here is where there's something um, not really connecting, I guess, because I think that's quite clear. Even thinking back to the first, like there was traditional seeking period, and then there was impersonal being. It's a bit like it's exactly the same, but without the noise in a sense. And
Yes,
so from that place, the
yes,
first thing I did, I just went back to because I work uh, with video games. I work as a designer, so I work creatively.
great.
And so the first thing that happened was essentially I just went back to designing stuff, and
Mm,
that's like the literal first thing. But I think one of the reasons why I really, I guess, had this conversation because I feel like the contractions are in the way of that. Because I think it's clear what you're saying and understanding. It's
mm.
just that I find in a way that the contractions play, in a sense, almost the opposite, right? It's like if I look at my face now, I look angry in a way, but then I'm like, I feel actually pretty good. And so in a way, it's just something it isn't matching. And
Mm.
it's the same thing with like, I understand what you're saying about it wasn't even inspiration. It was just kind of that was what I was gonna do. It was
Yes,
just obvious. It wasn't even because it was just,
yes,
to even say that someone was inspired about it would be to kind of say too much,
yes,
which
sure.
is of course the complete opposite to the experience. I mean,
Yes,
now where it's a bit like, oh, I feel like I have to willpower my way back, which of course just isn't doing anything. But at the same time, it's like I find myself back, how do I put it? Because I think when we're talking about impersonal being, now it's very clear that that's actually how it is.
yes,
It's just that on top of that, it's almost like it's effort, and then there's, sorry, effortlessness and effort added on top of it in a very
exactly.
arbitrary way. Because
Yes,
I could just remove the effort now, and that would just be, whatever happened would be the case. But like at some
yes,
point, it just feels like the effort kind of has to, either not matter or
yes,
disappear. And I think
yes,
that's kind of more why I'm here rather than,
yes,
you know,
certainly.
finding, I mean, it's impossible to look for awareness at this point anyway. I mean, it's not seeking really. It's just this oscillation between,
Yes. Well, it's realizing that we all really exist between impersonal being. Well, we all remain as impersonal being. That's all we can
yeah,
be. But it's great the way you describe it, that effortlessness appears to be obscured by effort. But when you stop making an effort, all there is effortless being. So but if we look at it in terms of um, the sort of sliding scale between impersonal being and the personal mode, what you see is that impersonal being is all there is because it's just
yeah,
whatever is arising. So whether they're thoughts or whether they're perceptions or sensations, they're all arising in impersonal being, impersonal awareness. But we've we've been conditioned to construct this character. So the character is like a character in a video game, really, because it has
I
certain
know.
qualities.
It's a really fun likening because I see that as well so clearly.
Yeah.
It's almost ironic that I work
Well,
with
you,
video games
it's
and that I do this. It's
exactly. Well, it's in a way, it's like it's your infinite nature having a bit of a joke, really, because
yeah,
what you're seeing is the clarity that you have in the way things are constructed. You probably have a deeper understanding in the way characters in video games are constructed. Um, and and having that, you see that actually they arise. You could say that um, the basis of the video game is like impersonal awareness. It's a field of infinite possibilities. And then you introduce form. So you introduce the landscape, you introduce the themes, the levels, the characters, and so you're just putting it together. And that's really all the relative realm of experience is. It's just it's a combination of different elements which give rise. It's just that this is a slightly more sophisticated
Yeah.
version. That's all it is, really. There's a sequence, so everyone remains as attributeless being. So attributeless being is almost like the player of the game. So if you have a console, a video console, then the player of the game can never actually partake in the game, but he's the only one who's playing the game ever. And
Yeah.
in the same way, attributeless being is the only player there is really. But we can construct these forms within the limitations of the matrix or the game, and we can, we can get them doing all kinds of tasks and things, and different have different challenges and whatever. Um, but what you could say is that getting the foundation of impersonal being is just realizing and knowing that you always have the option to kind of disengage from the game because you're always disengaged, really. It's just that the game is inviting us in because there are characters, there's maybe a principal character, and that principal character, we have our awareness on that and what it's doing, and then we're trying to, achieve things within the game. But we never become that character, but we can have the full experience. But the simplicity is in seeing that there's an option, which is in terms of the degree of investment of attention and energy within the dualistic realm, in the same way as there's an option in terms of the degree of investment of attention and energy in a video game, because as you as you build them and design them, you probably find it very easy to remain free of the invitations into identification with the game, because if you've constructed the character or you've constructed the challenges or whatever it is, then you're not really going to be buying into
No.
it because you always see it. You just remember, oh well, I did these operations which
But
resulted in.
it's such a funny. It's so yeah. It's a funny like me. It's but then with that within that model, like when what is it like the is it the video game character that has the contractions and can't be creative then, or is it if like how does that because it's like there's somewhere here that it's like it feels like
Yeah, that well,
I
really,
mean, I
it's
just don't know who has the problem then in a sense, it's because obviously you have to make it up, but at the same time,
yes.
it's like,
Well, the truth is, you remain ever free because you've designed the game, and and
I'll make
so.
a better game next time.
But it's just that there's a sliding scale between remaining totally free of the structures of the game, uh, or then fully identifying with the character within the game. So it's like with children when they play games, they become so absorbed that they lose the sense
Yeah,
of who they are because the identification goes with the character in the game, and part of it is the escapism of that experience. But it's very simple for you actually because that's all that's going on really, and what you've identified that you are the infinite impersonal awareness. Infinite impersonal awareness is really the infinite potential and creativity of the infinite being to create whatever game you wish to do. And you're doing that even in like it's in the human realm of experience. That's what you're doing really. And it's a question, but it's a question of it's like with with my brother, for instance, the thing you mentioned, you can maintain a feeling of ease and joy and lightness, and that's within the game. So
Yeah.
it's like the character can do that. So if you have a character and there's an aspect of the game which is like visiting garden centers and going to the beach and taking a dog for a walk, it's not a very challenging experience. So it's much easier to do that and maintain self-awareness to realize actually it is only a game. If the game is more challenging, where there's more mental and emotional attention required, so it seems very dramatic and life-threatening, then you have to give it much more attention and there's more identification with it. So that's really just the analogy that you're always free because you're the infinite being, and in the same way as you're free to create whichever games you wish to create, but when you're the one who's creating the game, you can decide, or playing the game, you can decide the degree to which you become absorbed in that. And really, what you could say is that the default mode, the option you have in terms of the designing the games, is that you can always remain as the designer of the game. So you're always looking at the games in terms of the structures and how they operate. You could say, well, there's this particular structure within the game which is issuing these invitations into drama, and it's the same way with the human experience, really. That it's just that birth is like birth is like um, starting off, at the age of less than one, of having to build this character in the computer game without anyone telling you, well, actually, you're playing the game, you're not the character. And that seems to be, most people in the world are actually caught up with identification with the character in the game, which is a few pixelations, really, without ever seeing, well, actually, they remain as the infinite being.
Why do I have the sense that, or how does, because it feels like everything, like every description you have of the personal being and everything resonates very clearly. It's just that it seems like it's, I don't even want to say Johannes, it's just that it seems so much that I have the awareness and I'm located in the head almost. So it's like it's both almost. Does that make sense? I
Yes,
mean, what
it
I
does. It
mean, what
does.
I'm, because I feel like if you were to say that I'm the boundless awareness, let's say, completely, I would be like, well, I'm not saying against you, but my sense is the opposite, right? And so it feels like I have the awareness. I know it's not true to experience,
Mm.
but that's like how I live it, right?
Yes.
And I feel like there's somewhere like it's almost weird how clear and unclear it feels like at the same time, because in a way, if forgive me for thinking a bit, right? But it happens occasionally. You know, it's like in a weird way, the whole non-duality of seeking thing, it's a bit like the character trying to become the awareness, but it's
Exactly.
actually the awareness that sees the character. And so it's
Exactly.
just that I'm exactly in that loop. It's just that I still feel like I'm the character that has the awareness. And I like it feels weird to even speak about it in a sense because it's sort
Yes.
of like it doesn't make any sense. And so it's like I don't see what the problem is really. I'm
No,
not sure if
exactly.
there is a problem. It's
Well,
just
there,
weird.
no.
It's just
Well,
weird, right? Because
it's
that's
it,
why it gets entangled. And it's like, because of course, if I take it to the neuroticness of the little mind here, then of course it's an effort to open the eyelids in the morning. But it's like
yes.
that's not the effortlessness we're talking about. Like it's almost like there's these two systems and they're kind of
Yeah.
they're
Yes.
they're like they're not battling because they're separate, but there seems to be some mix up which just makes them so
Well, it's quite simple
I
in
don't
the
know, like
way.
one is just fake and it's clearly seen as fake in a way, but it's that there's
Yes.
something here that isn't clear because obviously it wouldn't be, you know,
Well, all it is really, Johannes, is that um, that when we when we opt for the human experience, we're opting to put on the virtual reality suit of the human body. So there are certain aspects of technology within the human body. So there's a sense of localization. There's a sense of existing in time. There's a sense, well, there are the
Yeah.
physical senses. There are the subtle senses. There are the emotions. There's the conditioning that we've had. So it's just like a big Sims game. It's just where everything is being constructed.
And I
Um,
get, sorry.
and it is so compelling because everything about the virtual reality suit of the human body is designed to make it seem as though it is real. But what you've seen is that actually the infinite potential that you remain as never became that. So there isn't anything really that needs to be fixed in one way. It's just that there is it's just a matter of the way you wish to play the game because there's the virtual reality suit. You know that it is a virtual reality you're experiencing. You know that you never become bound by that at all. You're always totally free. But once you realize that, then you can function from the sovereignty of your infinite nature, which is where you regulate the degree of investment in the human experience. So you can decide the degree to which you experience the contractions, the limitations, um, and it's really it's something you'll realize you can regulate much more because it's just that the world is telling us that we are this character, and when we look at it from the point of individuality, it doesn't seem as though we have any power. It just seems as though we're stuck in the game in the same way as a character in a game. He can't step out of the game. But when you see that the sovereignty actually belongs to your infinite nature, then you see that the sovereignty is where you can maintain the sense of freedom. And it's the sovereignty which permits the regulation of the investment of energy into the game. So it's like a little junction point, which is the junction point between the sovereignty of your infinite nature and then stepping into the personal mode. And it's almost like a binary system because it's like an on-off switch. So you could say the off switch, when it's off, it's impersonal being, and that's all you can ever be. But then from the sovereignty of your infinite nature, you can flip the switch of personalization, and then off it goes. There's the personal mode appearing, and then the things you have to deal with on a personal level. But it's once the benefits of realization and the benefits of seeing that you're the sovereign being and you're the one who decides the degree to which you regulate the energy and input into the human experience is that you can regulate it on your terms because you can decide how much you play the game and you can also amend the nature of the character. The character can't do anything because he's just a few pixelations in the game. But you, the infinite being,
Yeah.
can do everything because you wrote the whole script. So begin to amend it on your terms. And you can also what's quite interesting is that the intelligence of the infinite being um, will amend the nature of the experience in a way where it just becomes really light and joyful and quite playful. And in a way, the the choice of career for you is a great example of that because it's a sort of outpicturing of what
Yeah.
reality is and everything you're doing because all the creativity that you utilize in the designing and the inspiration to create new structures and new games, all of that is coming from your infinite nature. And then
That's
there's,
very clear.
yeah, fantastic.
I mean, it's weird now because for some reason doesn't make sense to speak about some things anymore. But what I could say is that, for example, the creative process of making levels is very clearly effortless in a way. Like
Yes.
there's no like it's very clear
Mm.
that it's arbitrary, that there is oh, I did that level, like that's just,
Yeah.
uh, I mean, you could say that it's functional on some level, I suppose,
Yeah.
but it's honestly not that. And it's the same thing as funny when I speak. It's like I don't know what I'm gonna say, so in a way, I
Mm.
don't even know which problem I'm gonna bring up next. If that
Sure.
makes sense. It's really
Yeah.
weird, you know,
Yeah.
if I'm really honest about it, because it's like it's just that kind of veil that claims
Yes.
ownership in a sense, and it's false.
Yes. Yeah.
It's just false, and like it's because it's I'm trying. I mean, it looks like I'm thinking maybe, but it's just there isn't a lot of thinking going on. It's just that I guess it's yeah. Well, that was the end of that thought process, I suppose. Sorry.
No, that's fine. If you look at the distinction, say, between the creativity and the inspiration to invent new things, do you find that inspiring? Does that give rise to a feeling of expansion when there's creativity and inspiration? Or you may have been doing it so long that you can just do it without even giving it much attention?
No, it seems a bit mindy actually, but one of the favorite parts, if I understood your question right, is one of the favorite parts is actually doing the reproduction work and finding maybe reference images and just kind of fantasizing about where like it
Yes.
seems very mindy, but it's actually
Creative, yeah.
yeah. But I
Yeah.
think because I'm not so much when it comes to the actual creation of something, like literally sculpting terrain with
Mm.
that part seems very effortless either way.
Yes.
It's more the mental part that
Yes.
doesn't seem to align with that. And so it's the senses that it's almost like I have to go through a brick wall with the mind almost, and then it immediately it doesn't feel effortless. And then
Mm.
it's like it tends to be very entangled then with the thoughts about, oh, this should be effortless. Now I'm the person
Yes.
again. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Now I'm not. Today I'm not enlightened. What am I gonna do? I have to write an email to David. You know how it goes very quickly often.
Yeah.
It can. There's certainly a power here somewhere where the contraction it's like it feels a bit like the last defense of something in a sense where it's
Yes.
like it can just close down and then be like, yeah,
Yeah.
well, you can sit in this chair if you want. And
Yeah,
like,
exactly. Well,
that's kind of that's where and I've sensed that we are sort of in that area right now in a way where it sort of doesn't make sense because it's sort of also what I said, where it's like it feels like it's I, the character, trying to I'm not trying to become awareness, it would be silly, but you know what I mean? It's like
yes.
it's like it's almost like there's I don't know what the mind really is because I never find it, but
Mm.
you know, it's it seems like it's something that is like an energetic field in a sense, and it can shape itself in various ways. It's almost
Yes.
like it's an energetic thing prior
Yes.
to thought. That
Yeah.
makes more sense
Yeah.
because if we just take something very dramatic like a beamed in invitation, like I can sense them coming energetically prior to the thought actually. So
Yes. Great.
it's just that. So what actually maybe that's a thing we could look at. Um, because I can sense them coming quite literally from in front of me,
Yeah.
energetically.
Yes.
Then is the thought. Then is to me, it's not so much the feeling, it's directly contraction. And then
Yes.
it's actually, I can sense how it brings up the certain meanness that has to solve the problem. Because it's always something like that. So it's very clearly seen that whole loop
Yeah.
that even the invitation isn't actually personal, if that
Yes.
makes sense. Like
Yeah. Definitely.
it's almost like the demiurge sort of targets the meanness that is left, right? And it
Yes.
recreates the meanness that was left. And
Yes.
that's the loop that I get stuck in because of course it's relatively clear. And I mean
Yeah. That's it.
you can't unsee clarity. It's just
Mm.
that it becomes like water in soup in a way. And
Yes.
when I end up in that kind of, super depressed, suicidal state kind of, then it's like, well, of course it's an effort to do anything, but
Mm.
it's just that it's the wrong kind of it's like because then the mind spins, okay, well you can sit in the chair, but that's an effort that a person does.
Mm.
And so that's how it keeps perpetuating on that level when it spins that way. So
Yes.
it's very clear that like everything you're saying, I can verify that. It's
Yeah.
just that it's a bit like how this whole thing still plays. I'm not sure of because if all I'm saying is true, then it's a bit like, well, I guess I'm just kind of being silly then or something. I don't know.
Well.
It's
No,
weird.
well, it's very clear the way you describe it, and the way you see the energetic implications of the dualistic realm, because um, seeing it quite simply, what you realize is that um, impersonal being, we can actually live mainly from impersonal being. And I guess because of the way you live, because you're creative and you probably regulate the degree of interaction you have with other people because you may not find people that interesting sometimes. So
Got
so
me.
so you've probably been functioning mainly from impersonal being even since you were a little boy, because you found your intuition has guided you so that you're maintaining impersonal being. You spend time alone, you spend time creatively because it feels much more complete
Yeah.
than getting into the dualistic mode and then spending time with people where they're reinforcing the personal mode and delivering invitations to you into the personal mode. So I would say that's something which has been there probably most of your life, or certainly
Yeah.
for there was a point where you recognize that creativity and functioning and allowing infinite intelligence to flow through you creatively was a much more desirable and enjoyable experience than having too much interaction in the human realm.
It's in a way you could say that's actually all that I've ever valued. I mean, that's a bit dramatic perhaps, but I mean, it's kind of spot on. I would
Yeah.
say though, throughout life, I've always had to struggle or battle with the mind part in it.
Hmm.
And I think it's a bit weird because I guess this is why I'm a bit insistent that, of course, because it seems like things are like, there's always impersonal being or effortlessness. So that's always on, so to speak. Or, you can't turn it off, I guess. You can add the person on it. So the question
Yes.
is a bit like, how do we like switch? Because it's like, even if I look now, like I can kind of see how it's relatively arbitrary that I claim to be inside of this head and having the experience. Like it's like obviously a bit weird. It's just that there's some seems like since that seems to be how things are looked at, then that sort of is how it shows.
Yeah.
I don't know how to put it. And it's a bit weird. It's what when you said about uh well you talked a bit before about the character and more the you didn't say you said in personal being I think not awareness are
Hmm.
separate, right? Which is I guess why you say that nothing has to change, because of course nothing has to change in a way,
No.
like within, like that's the whole thing of like that character's trying to become, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But
Well,
it's
realize,
just,
sorry, carry on.
no, it's just that I can see how that is true. It just
Yes.
doesn't seem that it's correct. I mean, I know it's correct. It just doesn't seem complete if I
Experience.
seem limited by the contractions and
Yes.
by that I can't live out the creativity of or effortless live them out, I guess. I mean, I can always, go down the mind route of disciplining myself, but it's never the same thing. And it's,
Hmm. Yes.
do you know what I'm saying? Like,
I do, yeah. Well, really, what I would say is that the clarity of your true nature is really unquestionable. It's something there is already complete clarity. As you
uh,
described, for you just to say, well, actually, it's really obvious that there is effortlessness at the core. That's the foundation. And then superimposed on the effortlessness is effort, which gives rise to a sense of personalization and activity. But
mm,
really, what's happening for you is, and it's true of most people I have conversations with, really, which is that the clarity which is really fully present, and it's something which has been there for most of your life, and you've never really questioned it because you've always known it, and you've always been really functioning from intuition and
yeah,
remaining in alignment with impersonal being by choice. um, that the reason it seems paradoxical in a way is because the dualistic realm, within the dualistic game or the framework, there is this sort of adversary which you could say is like the demiurge, the dualistic central server. So the reason for the contractions and for it seeming to be a sort of upside down experience is because the more clarity there is, the more intense the invitations are to try to get you to personalize and for you to be distracted from your infinite potential. And that really accounts for your experience. It's why there's simultaneously great clarity, but also the intensity of the contractions, because the contractions are only invitations, really. They're being delivered, but there may have been a degree to which you're entertaining them on a personal level, but
Absolutely. I
but
want
you
them to go away. I mean, it's no, but let's. Sorry to just intervene. It's just. It's also fun to speak, I suppose. I don't know. It's like it's so funny because I sometimes look up at my image and like I look so angry. I'm like I just feel so nice in a way.
I
It's just
don't see
like
it.
that's the whole thing. It's like it feels
Yeah,
like
I don't see any anger with you. I see a little boy.
I'm 32, David. Jesus. Uh, but I think yeah, yeah. No, sorry. It's because you say, or I said it even myself that when there is the clarity of an because there are like small invitations here and there, and I'm not so concerned maybe, but I do sense that they are like beamed in
Very specifically.
master invitations that are like, we're gonna bring back everything now, and that
Mm.
happens.
Yes,
And I guess because that's the only time, but like that's where I can clearly see the whole energetic shift to the
yes.
person reborn, and then I kind of become the person reborn, right?
Mm.
But it's like that's the only time where it's clear is the energetic thoughts and contraction. But right now, I just sort of sense that there is the contraction. I'm like, I'm sitting here and there aren't that many thoughts going on. I mean, I'm speaking, but I mean, I'm
Mm.
not thinking about what I'm saying, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So it's
Well,
like,
great. Well, because really in this conversation, the conversation's really being conducted within effortless being. So it's easier. There's just like a natural flow. So there might be one or two contractions or invitations coming in, but they'd be seen quite easily. It's just that part of the nature of the game is, and especially as you're still very young, most experiences you've been exposed to in the human realm have been to do with personalization. So you don't get many opportunities to have a conversation which is based on unity consciousness or effortless
no.
being. It's that most people you speak to, they're installing personalization in every word they say.
But would you also, yes, I am very thankful to speak with you, David. I never said that maybe. It's fun. But I like because it feels it's more like what I'm trying to I guess I'm trying to adjust the mind model away because it's when it comes to the small invitations, right? Like I just, our studio just closed, so now I have a lot of time over, but no job, right? But and then I have to talk to mom about that, and I can see how like she gets worried about that, right? And that
Mm.
starts spinning, and then it's like
Yeah.
I can see how it starts here as well, but it
Mm.
feels like those invitations are relatively, I mean, they spin for a short while, really,
Yes.
and it seems like if if someone speak to me from a personal perspective and I'm in the personal perspective, then that kind of perpetuates. But
Yeah.
it's almost like if the more impersonal being there is clearly
Yes.
here or like in the mind, the less of a problem that is as well.
Yes.
Because it's a
Exactly.
bit like the me only speak to the me and the other
Yes.
radio transmitter in a way. And so if you remove
Yeah.
one radio transmitter, then you only have 50% at least.
Yes.
If does that also make sense? Because
It does,
it's a
definitely.
bit weird because I sense that it's really relatively clear alone, but then I start talking with friends, or it could be like anything really, like any
Yes.
human thing that
Yeah.
seems personal, but it isn't really.
Yes. Well,
But it still like spins the personal will, and I can see how the
yes.
contraction comes up, and it's like it's weird because I can't really see
Well, really,
how that
for you,
works.
there is already complete clarity. So when Johannes is alone, then those invitations aren't appearing there because there are different sources of invitation. So there's the invitations which are being beamed into the body mind from the dualistic central server. So they're the familiar ones. They're the ones which you may have entertained to some degree, which is why they continue to be delivered.
Oh, I'm not good enough and I have to do stuff all the time. Those
Yeah.
ones. Oh, I know those.
So that's the one. And then there are the collective ones which we receive through the media, the ones trying to put us into fear.
Yeah.
And then you have the personalized ones, which are to do with family members. So your mum probably is the best example of that because with each of us, the invitations or the conditioning we receive, it's actually installed before we're even born because the body mind is the programs that your mum has are being downloaded into the body mind that you're taking delivery of. So you're familiar with the various programs that your mum has running. You know exactly how she's feeling,
Yeah.
what the invitations are, what the basis of them is. You can see through them. So you know that energetically it isn't beneficial to entertain those invitations because, for instance, if you're this is an example similar to the one with my brother, which is that if you maintain a sense of ease and lightness and appreciation for things as they are, and focus on the freedom you have and the joy of your life exactly as it is, then the invitations which are trying to put you into fear about, oh, I don't have a job at the moment, or what about my financial situation, whenever we're fueling those energetically, we're actually creating the frequency. It's like a level in a game. There's the
Yeah.
level in the game, which is that's the level where there's financial insecurity and fear. But then you know that actually you don't need to engage with that because you know how to get out of that level. You know where the door is, so you can go through the door, and then you're into neutrality. And then you can go through the door from the level of neutrality into the level of lightness, inspiration, and handing the responsibility of everything over to your infinite nature, because that's something which is available to you. But it's just what you'll become more and more proficient at is when you're with family and friends, you'll see the way the invitations are being delivered and how they're they're like little mirrors. They're mirrors of your past in a way, you could say. It's like in a video game, you have characters that show up from previous levels in the game, and they're trying to invite you back into the lower levels. But you don't need to take those invitations because you know that if you entertain the frequencies that your mum's entertaining, which is, fear or anxiety, you know that all that's going to do is it's going to take you to that level of fear and anxiety.
So I have
Um,
a question.
Certainly.
I almost raised my hand like back in school. Because it's funny because yeah, sorry, almost went off again. I feel like when you say all those stuff, right? Like I see that those are invitations and they are past me. It sounds like I am a person that has to overcome them or stay alert or practice something. Is that true on a human level and not the problem, or am I hearing it wrong? Does that make sense?
Well, there are different ways of looking at it, really. What the main the master key, you could say, is in the human video game. There's a default mode, which is where we can hand the responsibility of the game onto an automatic level, where we have all the fun of the game, but without having to take responsibility. But within the game, there's the option of personalization, which is where it's a much tougher game because it appears as though we have to take responsibility for everything on a personal level. But the so so when we enter the game at birth, we're all conditioned into the more difficult version, which is the personalized mode, thinking that we have to take responsibility. But there's a point at which we recognize actually there's a default mode where we can hand over the responsibility for all of the aspects of the experience which aren't particularly enjoyable, which you could say are the low frequency emotions and concepts of limitation. And then we can focus on all the joyful aspects of the experience, because they just come automatically. It's like once you recognize that there are just those levels at which those particular experiences like fear, anxiety, guilt, preoccupation, jealousy, all of those sort of things, they relate to a particular level. We've been through that level, we found our way out of it, and that we can then just we're on to a level then where we're actually handing over responsibility of the life experience to the intelligence of our infinite nature. But it's just that there are the two different sources. So the intelligence which structures the game, which is the dualistic central server or the demiurge, is always trying to get us to engage with it energetically. But once you've seen that you're the infinite being, you see that there's actually this default mode where you hand over responsibility for every aspect of the game, in terms of responsibility, because the nature of the infinite being is that it will take responsibility for you. And it just becomes a very magical experience then, rather than it being mundane.
Yeah, it's a matter. You said responsibility, taking responsibility kind of resonated a bit. I don't know if I have anything to say really. It's mine. I went a bit blank. Like handing over responsibility, right? That's what you said.
Yeah, it's really that the you could say the structure of the dualistic realm is like the structure of a video game, where the game is trying to take us responsibility for things, where we're having, it gives us all these burdens that we have to carry. It's saying, oh, actually, to get through this level, you have to carry this ladder, this bucket,
It's
these,
just like the level of finding a job, for example.
yeah, yeah, exactly. That you find, the example I gave of my brother, for instance. And I had similar experiences years ago, which is where, um, for me, it was quite a dramatic experience in a way, because I had a business, and the it was a property business, and there was a recession, a global recession at the time. So it became very difficult to actually operate this business, because there was no property market. The banks had made everything very difficult for everyone. So there weren't mortgages available, so people could buy the properties you built. So there was no way you could play the game. And so initially there was the playing of the game, where you're doing things like you're operating your business effectively, you're making sure it's good quality products, you're responsible with responsible financially and in terms of regulations. So you're playing all of that aspect of the game, and then there's this other element comes in, which makes it impossible to play the game. Um, so the only option there, initially there were invitations into fear and limitation, and there were attempts, first of all, to try to resolve it on a personal level by working really hard and doing all sorts of things. None of that worked, but the solution arose when there was a complete letting go of the idea that I could do anything, because it was there was like a futility, it was like an invitation in a way, where I just realized there was nothing that I could do on a personal level to resolve the situation. So I just decided to go and live in a meditation community instead. So I did that for 5 years, and then the situation resolved. But it didn't resolve by activity. It resolved because um, the frequency. I was maintaining. Initially, there were the invitations into the idea of failure. So it looked as though the business was going to fail, and I was frantically fighting to try to save it. But when I stopped frantically fighting and said, well, actually, I'm just going to change, rather than focusing on the problematic aspect of this business, what I'm going to do is have the experience I like. I thought I'll go and live in this meditation community. I'll be doing all this meditation, having experiences of bliss, expansion, a really leisurely life, just going and visiting the Lake District and having nice walks and, living in a very simple way but in a very expansive way. So it changed the nature of the frequency. So instead of focusing on the problematic aspect, there was a shift into realizing, well, actually, I don't need to focus on that. I can just have a fantastic time instead. And that was really liberating. And I recognized then that there was this mode where we can actually switch. It's like when you know the door, it's like if you're in, you could be on a particular level of a video game and you're having to fight all the demons, but you know where the door is. So what you do is you just walk through the door into the Garden of Eden level, which is above that, and you just have a really nice time there instead because you don't need to be battling with them. And it's that aspect, that's the option you have, and it's quite interesting in terms of your current experience because there are still some invitations coming in from your childhood conditioning and from the frequencies which
Yeah.
were installed on a family level. But
Yeah.
because you've seen through those, you realize you don't need to activate them. So you're attentive. In a way, you could say that it requires a bit of focus, but it's really just focusing on joy and looking at every aspect of your life. You probably live in a lovely city or a great location. You have really nice friends around, um, and you can just have a fantastic time. So you don't focus on the problematic aspect of your current experience. You focus on the expansive aspect, the fact that there's realization, that there's clarity in terms of your infinite nature and all the knowledge you have in terms of the structuring of the video games, you just have to apply all of that to the life experience of Johannes and you're home and dry really because it's all the same stuff.
I don't know. There's Am I just waiting for a response in my head?
Well, if the response is just silence, that's great. Because if the mind just goes quiet and there aren't any invitations being delivered, it's really that there's a point sometimes in these conversations where the dualistic central surf is just stumped. It doesn't it doesn't have any comeback.
Yes, because it's a choice, I guess, to make the contractions the problem, and that's kind of the invitation, I guess.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
Because I could just, well, it's like I think
Disregard
you
them.
said. Sorry, go ahead.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, but yeah, you can just disregard them because you can either entertain the contractions or you can switch your focus to expansion. Because when the focus is on expansion rather than contraction, there are no contractions. And that's the sovereignty, really. That's what almost where you're rewriting the software.
Because this is the interesting part, David. Thank you. I used to live in England, by the way. My first job was
Oh, did you?
lived in Derby. Yeah.
In Derby?
Yes,
Oh,
two
no, that's
years. I don't know why that popped into my head. No, that was probably an invitation, I guess, distracted me by something. But that's fun.
that's good.
Um, it's so funny how this works because, as you say, there is clarity and everything, and I can see. I mean, there is in a way complete agreement with what you're saying. It's just funny that I noticed like whenever we talk about this subject, right, that is very, let's say, human level, let's say,
Mm.
there's a very strong tendency to want to go off and talk about something else. And it's really interesting how it blanks out kind of and wants to go and talk about something else. And
Yes.
which is why I'm kind of, there is something being said here because I think what happens still is like there's a mix up between the character and
And the infinite being.
yeah, and I think it's the sensation is that, like I said, like Johannes is it's like it's a fake problem, but it's also not a fake problem, sort of like how to put it, because
Yeah.
it's like there is how should I say what is it's partly projection or sorry projection,
Mm.
but it seems like there should be like a clear split
Well, there
in a
actually,
sense, like
yes,
in one way or another, there should be a
yes,
clarity of here's the character
yes.
and here's I mean the knowing. I mean the knowing. It sound. I don't. It sounds a bit dry, but you know what? Do you know what? Does it make sense what I'm saying,
It does
or is
really.
it just stupid? Because it's not like I'm not looking even for a better experience. It's just that it
No.
seems like it's still the character that knows and that has awareness, even if it's arbitrary in a sense. There's a need for like a split
Well,
or a
it's
gap
really
or
just
a
in some ways you're just in. You could just say that you're kind of enjoying the game,
yeah.
and there's a there's the sensation of contraction, which is a part of entertaining the game. On the human level.
It's funny how I
Uh,
know that intuitively, but I don't recognize it cognitively, if that makes
and,
sense.
and well, it's like you were saying earlier that you can either engage with the game or you can just withdraw from it. And so the contractions are only an issue really when you're engaging with the game because the contractions can only exist on the personal level. So you have to be identifying with the character for there to appear to be the contractions. But the option that is always there, because actually you never were the character, you've always been the infinite being, is that you can opt for expansion instead. So there's like the contraction level of the game, and then the floor above that is the expansion level. And so you can be wrestling to try um, to resolve the contractions and to be analyzing them and to be engaging with them. But actually, it's very easy. All you need to just do is go upstairs and you're in the expansion zone instead.
You just called me out so good on the entertaining the contractions game so much. I'm guessing I'm not the first. Why do I feel like I would like to ask the question, how do I go up properly to the other level? But I kind of
Well,
feel
it's
like it's an
because
invitation at the same time, but it's also not
it's
like
because
there's
that
some, yeah.
well, it's the ingenious nature of the dualistic realm. It's like the software written into the dualistic realm, which is it's monitoring every aspect of our conversation. And the dualistic realm, moment to moment, is delivering invitations more quickly than thoughts appear. But those invitations are tailor-made to give the dualistic realm the best option of keeping you engaged. But it isn't even your thought.
Can we just perpetuate the game 1 minute longer? I had a question
So,
because you said there are invitations delivered quicker than thoughts, right?
mm,
Can you expand on that? Because I sometimes sense that the invitations that I'm not really suffering them, but you know what I mean,
yeah,
are actually not thoughts. They are actually subtler than or like contractions prior to thoughts.
yes, yeah.
And I've just everyone always tells me, thoughts are first, but can you expand on that part for just a bit?
Yeah, certainly. Well, it's because the structure of the dualistic realm is that the for it to work and for us to be able to play, the delivery of the invitations has to be faster than thought, because those invitations are being delivered, and then the thought actually is cognized. It's the way you were saying earlier that that you can feel it energetically before the arising of the thought.
So you mean the energetic shift is the invitation rather than the thought? Is that what you mean?
The invitation is there's the ability to experience it on a more subtle level energetically, where it has a certain frequency, a frequency of contraction usually, and then that manifests um, as a thought. And the way the thought is delivered, though, or the way the invitation is delivered, is to maximize the opportunity of you identifying with it and thinking that it's your thought, and then voicing it as though it's your problem, when really you're the infinite being, and it's just like little invitation to try to get you to identify with it when it never was your thought in the first place. It's just part of the software, it's part of the structure of the game.
I'm just pretending to think. I'm not actually thinking anything. I mean, it's like the thing is like it's so stupid. The whole thing is like because it feels like there is the silence, right? But there's a certain blankness of the mind. It's like
Yes.
because it's because we can also just say this. If the mind just stopped thinking about non-duality, how off I would go, I wouldn't have any problem with it anymore, and I would already be clear. So it's a kind of stupid problem. It's I wouldn't even have to go upstairs. So I could just, you know. Sorry, I just entangled a bit again, but
No, that's fine. But well, really, um,
because it's clear to sorry, it's just that it's so clear to me that whatever I is in that sense, you know, in a very direct experience, like if I'm walking around this apartment thinking because I like thinking, forgive me, right? It's very clear that I'm allowing that.
yes.
It's extremely clear. The reason why I, in a sense, don't stop it is because I feel like I have to, may it's like I have to make a story in my head of why I wouldn't follow it, if that makes sense. It's a bit
Yeah, sure.
stupid. Like it's a bit like it's obviously an effort to follow the thought, but it's also like I have to just create another mental model of Johannes that isn't following thought. And so I end up a picture. I don't even, maybe we don't even need to solve this. I don't remember even why I started talking about this.
Well, what you saw there was really interesting because um, there's an aspect of the thinking process which is really to do with entertainment, and you kind of enjoy it.
Mhm.
But what happened is when you were looking at the invitations, the way the invitations are structured prior to thought, and then the thoughts being delivered, you saw that whole sequence, and it just stopped the process. And so there was some space there where you could see, well, actually, this is optional. That I can either entertain this on the basis of personalization and actually admit that on some level I've been enjoying it and it's been a form of entertainment,
Yeah.
or I can turn it off, which you can do. So you can turn it off and you can just have the peace instead. And that's where you see the clarity of impersonal being, that the impersonal being is always there. That option is always there. And impersonal being, a simple way to see impersonal being is it's just whatever is going on, but without a commentary. So there can be an engagement in daily activity, and it's necessary to get up. You clean your teeth, you have a shower, whatever, and all those activities can go on, but there's the point at which they can be just conducted impersonally, where there isn't the personalized commentary, which is running alongside whatever the activity is. And that's really the
So
distinction between impersonal being and the personal mode.
is there, it's funny how the most significant thing seems to be the most human, boring things in a way, but it's Okay, what if I put it this way? If tell me if I'm going off on a tangent, I don't really mean to, but is it like a function in some sense that thoughts and action or thoughts and what is arising is tangled together?
Yeah, well, that's a function of the game, you could say, because
Because
if you look at the structures, and let's just look at them quite simply. So,
hmm
um, if we look in this moment, we could say there is impersonal, effortless awareness of some thoughts arising or of the mind being quiet.
hmm
So that's one distinction. So that's really the astral realm or the mental realm. So that's known impersonally and effortlessly. And then there's the level of the emotions. So we could say there's impersonal, effortless awareness of emotions arising and the energetic implications of that, which is also known distinctly. So that's known independently. And then, so that's the etheric or the emotional body. And then there's the third one, which is there is effortless impersonal awareness of the physical body. So so we can have the clarity of and the simplicity of effortless awareness of the physical body without personalization. So so there's effortless impersonal awareness of thoughts, effortless impersonal awareness of emotions, and effortless impersonal awareness of the body. And they always actually exist independently because they exist in different realms of experience. But the way they're put together to create the character, which never actually happens, is just through the ingredient of personalization in language. Because if we're knowing the thoughts independently and impersonally, we're knowing the emotions impersonally and independently, and we're knowing the body mind um, impersonally and effortlessly. But it's only when we activate the character through the use of language that it appears as though there is a character called Johannes. But actually, there never has been. There's only ever been effortless being. It's only the illusion of the character which is created through the conceptualization, which is that's just the personalization of the language, the conditioning that was installed through all the people you've met through your life. They've handed it on to you to create this personalized mode, this personalized option. Um, you probably haven't handed it on to many people, but
Mm.
it's something which is being transferred. It's like every time you walk through the door and you meet someone they're actually issuing invitations into personalization. But when you know that's what's going on, it's like you saw that the clarity you had when you went to see your mum, and you could sense that she was slightly anxious about her little boy. She's thinking, well, he hasn't got a job at the moment. I'd better get some extra food in. I'll invite him round to have some meals because I'm a bit worried about him. But
But
because you sense that because you're totally tuned in with your mum, you're tuned in with the program, so you knew exactly what she was feeling. But you remained free of it because you knew energetically that it wasn't beneficial to be fueling those emotions because what it does is it perpetuates the experiences that you're afraid of because it maintains that frequency. It's on the level, there's the video game level, which is the fear and anxiety level.
why? Because I always sense that I accept the invitation, though. In a way.
Well,
I mean, in the sense that, when I described the energetic and then how the person was reborn, the thing is like I can see that, but I still go through the process and end up out here and I still know it. So it's like it's clear, but I feel like it's like I always, I mean, I
it's
shouldn't
just
say always, but it feels like I accept the invitations. I just don't know really how, in a sense.
Well, it's just the residue of the programming, really,
You
because
think so?
yeah,
So
that's
you
all it.
think that dies down just
Yeah, well,
for sure?
it's firstly knowing that that when you function from impersonal being, you're functioning from sovereignty. So when you do that, you disconnect the energy supply from the character in the game. So he doesn't have the means to be able to activate the contractions. And so well, the way you describe the situation with your mum actually demonstrates that there's the seeing through of the invitations anyway. And really, the invitations we receive from our mum and dad and family members is where they're the most intense invitations, because they're not only are they being delivered to us and we're more familiar with them, but they're actually wired into our own software.
I I have another fun. It's not fun actually. It's a bit fun. It's yeah, well, it's both. I actually noticed that the invitations. I loved when you talked about lawnmower with Ben, I think,
Oh, yes.
because I remember listening to it and I was like, this is just silly. And then, after that, I was like, oh, I can see the lawnmower running. And what I noticed was that it seems like it's a weird thing to talk about because it's in a sense perpetuated, but it's weird because I sense that the invitations targets the areas where there is the most effortless being in Unity by default.
Yes.
And then it it turns essentially where there has been Unity, and it can be like me and a girl, for example. Like I can see like,
Yes.
oh, there was just Unity, right? And you gets dead a bit when you talk about it in person in a sense, but you know what I mean.
Yes.
And I can sense how like the invitations created that person, so to speak, to
Yes.
be a triggering point for negative emotions. And it's just so fun to see that because I mean, I didn't necessarily have the best, psychological upbringing, but it's just fun to see that now where
Yes.
that has been playing since when I grew up. And so,
Yeah.
but I mean, maybe that just dies down. I mean, because really the tricky bit
Yes.
is that the game is sort of happening on two layers, right? Like you have the energetic layer, which is more like impersonal being, let's say. And I mean, I'm not
Yes.
sure if you could say that, but maybe. And then the person is reborn and thinks, "Oh, I have to solve this problem." But of course, the
Yes.
unity came because of the person wasn't there to begin with, so it's like a
Yes.
fake show completely on
Yes.
one level, which is why
Yes.
it never helps really to meditate the problem way in that sense. But at
Exactly.
the
Yes.
same time, there is a form of realignment that seems to happen needs to happen in a sense. Does
Yes.
that make sense what I just said? Because
It does. Yeah.
this is why everything, and imagine why I'm struggling with my mind the entire time, because I mean it's always on invitations because of the unity from creativity, and then off I go again. And so
Yes.
you know
Because it's targeting the points at which there is most clarity
but
and
yeah,
and most ease of functioning from effortless being. But what you've recognized is really important, which is that the way to resolve it isn't on that sort of more gross level of the conceptual realm or the character. It's more on an energetic level, because you can detect the energetic implications prior to the arising of the concept. So you can address it on that level as you feel the invitations coming in. You can decline them. You can just decline the energy rather than having to wrestle with the concepts and with the structures. It's as you did with your mum, when you went to visit your mum, you felt the energy. You could see, you sense what the feeling level was that was coming through there. So you knew that you didn't need to address it on the verbal level. You sense that you're there because it's based on love, really, but it's like a distortion. If you take the invitations with your mum, it's really the love she has for you, but the dualistic realm hijacks that love and turns it into fear and anxiety about your welfare.
yeah,
That's how your mum's receiving the invitations. But for you, you recognize that those invitations were coming from your mum. You recognize the frequency. So you knew, because you recognized it on an energetic level, you knew that it wasn't necessary to engage on a conceptual level. So you didn't have a conversation with her saying, well, actually, mom, it's because you're feeling, a bit anxious about me, and you're projecting this onto me and you want me to buy into it as well and to become a bit frightened about not having a job for a little while. But you sensed that. So you didn't, you probably said, well, would you like a cup of tea, Mom, or shall we sit down and have a little chat? So you didn't engage on that level. And that's an example of how you deal
Here,
with any contraction or any invitation, really. You just switch the focus from contraction to expansion. You just don't entertain it because
there is a
engaging with it is energizing it.
yes. There is something here. Wait. Okay, so we're not gonna energize a problem from thinking, let's say, right? I mean, we're not gonna solve it on that level,
No.
but you are still talking about the energetic level, right? So this sounds like you're referring to, because I tend to throw out the baby with the bathwater, if that makes sense, right? So
Yeah.
it's like, it's like the me, and then there's the seeker me, and then the seeker try to throw out the eye, whatever. Anyways,
Yes.
but that little loop, it's just that I'm sensing because it's like I feel like it's almost more of an issue of stepping into the shoes rather than because what has been troublesome in life, right, is action, taking, doing. And so I'm wondering what if I'm hearing what if we take that energetic implication, right, or that invitation, is what you're suggesting is to in a way align with or cultivate a certain energetic alertness so that you can deny the thoughts from arising in terms
Yeah.
of the
Well,
invitation, or are you
yes.
meaning that it can play and then it doesn't really matter? Because it sounds like there's a doing here, but it's not really a doing at the same time.
It is a kind of alertness, you could say, because it's just that it becomes that the mind tries to make it really complicated because it wants you to be engaging the mind because that's how you become energetically engaged. But the solution is really simple, which is that the invitations, they're like salesmen. They're trying to sell you something. So it's like you're walking down the road and, a salesman's coming along and one might be trying to sell you double glazing and the other one's trying to sell you insurance, but you don't want to buy either. So, so as soon as you see their
Yeah.
little pad, and you see the pictures of the windows on it of the or the insurance policies, you know automatically that you don't want to engage with them and you don't want to buy them. So it's very easy just to smile at them and walk on by. And that's the way to deal with the invitations really on an energetic level because you don't really want to even expend any energy in giving them attention. But what the invitations are trying to do, they want you to be engaged. So they want you to stop and have a very long conversation about double glazing. But you don't need to because you don't want it. So you just smile and walk on by. And it's the same with, it doesn't take a lot of analysis. It's just on an intuitive, energetic level, on a feeling level, whether if there's a feeling of expansion, that's guiding you, that's energetically guiding you to more expansion, more potential, and more of a magical experience in your life for everything to be opening up beyond anything the mind could conceive of. But the contraction is trying to keep you engaged in the dualistic realm. So it wants you to be analyzing it, questioning it, and feeling as though there's a problem you need to solve about the contraction, when really it's just you don't need to engage with it. It's like, the double glazing salesman comes along and he's saying, well, you could have either double glazing or you could have triple glazing, with storm protection as well if you want. Well, you don't even want any windows. And it's like that. You don't need to give it much attention, really.
Yeah, I mean, it's super clear when you're in the invitation game because it's always playing polar opposites,
Yeah.
guilty, not guilty. shame,
Yes.
pride, whatever. So it's super
Yeah.
simple. It's just
Yes.
because what I'm sense. I guess this is where I'm now. Because it's so funny because I can see myself engaging with it
That's
or
great.
myself. I don't know if it's the mind that bounces more correctly, whatever the mind is, but it's like
Yeah.
because I sense like intuitively what it's a bit like I feel like I'm in a relationship to the invitation in a way, right?
Hmm. Well, what you could say is the dualistic central server has profiled Johannes, and it says, well, actually, he's very creative. He's fully aligned with infinite effortless being. He's been doing that since he was a little boy. We're not going to change that because he's already fully aligned. What can we do to keep him engaged? Well, actually, he's got a powerful mind. He's got a really good intellect, and he enjoys playing with that. So let's keep him engaged on the conceptual level because we can keep him energetically engaged with the concepts because that's something that he enjoys. And because he's enjoying it to some degree, he probably won't notice that we're stealing his energy while he's doing it.
Yeah, it's funny because like I'm sitting here now, and as I said, like there isn't really any thinking specific or anything,
Great.
but it feels like it's a practice. But that also seems superimposed,
Yeah, well, even those thoughts, is trying to convince you that it's a practice, is a delivery from the dualistic
or like
central server.
that. I'm like doing it because because what I noticed, like it's what I said about before, where I go with the thoughts, right?
Hmm.
Knowing that I go with the thoughts and that it's silly.
Yeah,
I think where there is maybe like lack of alertness or something, but it seems like it feels effortless because that's what it's conditioned to go for, right? Or that
yeah.
it's like, but it isn't actually effortless. It's just that it's the habit. Because
That's
obviously
distinction.
it's
Yeah.
less effort to not think than to think. It's just that
Yes.
what happens, right, is that it feels like an effort not to think because it's, what do you say, like
Yes.
the, I lost the
It's
English
yeah,
word.
it's like a groove which you've remained in,
So
but
that's
you've
what, yeah.
never really questioned it. So it feels like effortlessness because, as you say, it's habitual. But what you've done there is you've dismantled that conditioning because the conditioning was trying to make it seem as though um, continuing to do it was effortless but it was actually because it was habitual that it didn't require much effort. Whereas to see through it and to see what's going on, it just required a little bit of clarity. But once you've seen it, you see that it is actually very easy, that you have the option just to remain as impersonal being, and then they're only invitations into contraction, which you don't need to engage with them. You're just much more powerful than you ever realized.
I'm just pretending to think again. Just give me a second. Um, I wonder if that is, so there are, so what's going to happen there is I'm going to sit in the chair and then I'm going to not go with the thoughts. And then my thoughts are going to say, now you're practicing. But that's going to be
Yeah,
obvious.
that's like the likely invitation. Yeah, it says you've
And
turned it into
that's,
practice.
and then that's the wheel spinning between the me and the me seeker. And, that just goes off in its own realm. But
Mm.
that's meaningless. So that means that, okay, well, that's kind of clear because then it doesn't matter if it feels like a practice or not. I mean, it's
No, well, it's
obviously superimposed either way. I mean, it doesn't matter if it is even because obviously it's not the becoming in it, if you know what I'm
yeah.
saying.
What you've seen is that it's actually seeing that there is an option there, which maybe you didn't realize was there before. But it doesn't require a practice. It's just realizing that there's the option either to engage or to remain disengaged. So to to entertain the sense of contraction, there has to be an element of personalization present for there to be a sense of contraction. Because if you're just remaining as impersonal being, then there is only the option for either neutrality or a sense of expansion. So there is no practice really. It's just that you'll just
Oh
become
no,
really proficient at just seeing the invitation coming along. You just recognize the flavor of it. Is it expansion or is it contraction? Oh, this one's contraction. No, I don't think I'll entertain that one. I'll just have a cup of tea instead or something. You know?
because I think like that's been the mistake in a way, where it's been superimposed to be an effort, but it isn't because it's just breaking the habit. And I think
Yeah.
that's where it's fun because relating to that, it sort of doesn't matter if things are, well, it doesn't matter because I don't think anything survives that. And then you could, spin the wheel and say it's a process or whatever, but it doesn't
Yes.
matter because it doesn't matter.
And what you'll notice is that when you exercise that option to decline the sense of contraction, that the energy which previously was fueling the contraction, because it's only ever your own energy which fuels the sense of contraction, that energy will be reclaimed and it becomes available in terms of more intense feelings and experiences of expansion.
Oh yeah, very, I don't, it's not very interesting. It's slightly interesting, maybe mediocre interesting. But anyways, I when the first switch happened,
Hmm.
I didn't recognize it so much as being the heart online, but I feel like the heart is definitely opening up
Great. Yeah, fantastic.
during, well, I think in general the last 2 years, but since I saw your teachings, I think that cleared up something.
Fantastic.
Because I'll mention it, but I think what resonated was that you don't make any concessions to the personal mode really, because the koshas and that, really, and yeah, it's just, I guess that's what resonated, I suppose. Um,
Well, it's great that you see that, and also what it shows is that you've actually been through the gateless gate for quite a while, because the only way that that can happen, um, where the balance between the heart and mind becomes more um, more harmonious, is when there has been a withdrawal of investment from the mental realm, because it's the conditioning we have is for the mind to be predominating. But as you withdraw the energy from the investment in the mental realm, it brings balance in terms of the heart, because it's really that what you could say is the that effortless being is a combination of infinite love with infinite intelligence, whereas the mental realm is intelligence without love. So when there's mind predominance, the energy is fueling the conceptual realm. But when there's the withdrawal of investment from the conceptual realm and the withdrawal of the energetic investment in the dualistic realm in general, then naturally the energy which was previously being invested in the mental realm and the limitations of the dualistic realm begin to activate the potential within unity, which is the combination of infinite love with infinite intelligence. And that's when it becomes much more enriched and expansive, because you then begin to live from unity. So the screen of duality is removed, and then there's just this sense of unity. So you begin to see that everything is you, and everything begins to be integrated into unity. And then the heart and mind become um, fully energized.
yeah, I think that's it's super clear that it's um, the mind that makes it appear not to be unity. I
Yeah,
think that is super clear. You could
Yes,
then
correct.
make that into a problem, be that, oh, I'm not experiencing unity, but it's sort of it's like they're looking at the, it's not the right approach, but it's like it's super clear that it's like,
Yes.
I mean, you can start splitting that into a problem of, oh, I'm not experiencing unity, but it's like obviously you are. It's just that there's still the mind
Yeah, there's still an
with the
investment
bullshit
in.
and noise and the
Yes.
silent noise of the mind. It's super fun. I was sitting at the uh, I had a beer. Sorry, I'm not very holy. With my mom at
No,
the
that's,
at the pub, and
that's
I
fine.
was just sitting out in the sun, and for some reason
Experiencing
birds.
unity consciousness, probably.
Yeah, but like what I like, this is where the mind can spin sometimes. That I want the experience of unity, right? Like that can become a thing, but it's sometimes it is clear, and it's
Yeah.
just so nice to see how things just move.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's literally in terms of how it looks like from sight. It's like
Yes.
how when the mind falls away in a way, even just slightly, it's so obvious that
Yeah.
everything is fine. It is
Yes.
so obvious.
Well, the experience you had really was of unity. So when the mind's running, it's saying, "Oh, you shouldn't be having a drink. You should be doing something, going down to the health food shop or something instead." But that's the judgmental aspect. Whereas what actually happened, you sit down in the sunshine, and then there's the falling away of the personal mode. Then there's the arising of bliss. There's the taste of the beer, the sound of the birds singing, the sunshine. And it's a unified experience then because there's no judgment and there's no comparison. So there's an
Yeah,
innocence which comes into it because
but
the judgment, which was previously grading experiences, it wasn't there anymore.
it never occurred to me that it was already so clear to me for some reason, everything. But then, because, so I'm just asking mainly the questions because I suppose, uh, well, there is no reason. I'm just inventing the reason anyway. But um,
It's just a little game of hide and seek, that's all. And it's just
yeah, I
that
mean, it's fun in a way. But I mean, what I was gonna say is like, because as I said, like it's then tempting to say, oh, I'm not realized because I don't have that experience, but that's nonsense completely then.
yeah, exactly, yeah.
So I don't that's because there happens sometimes there are subtle and crueler goals playing, in
Mm.
judgments. Okay. Um,
But the option for you to experience unity consciousness is there whenever you wish to, really. It's just a matter of wherever you are. It's just noticing the forms arising equally and effortlessly. And you find that it begins with neutrality. So you're just noticing the forms initially. And then there can be a feeling of expansion. So there could be a feeling of love and unity, the love of the sound of the birds, the love of the taste of the beer. And then there can be more euphoric experiences which arise as well. But that's all within the realm of unity. There isn't any judgment or comparison or separation. It's just that it's a heightened sense of expansion where everything being experienced is being experienced on a more expansive level.
yeah. And then the only thing that sort of hides that in a sense you could say is the mind energy. It's
Yeah.
and so that's why you don't have to practice anything in a sense apart from the not going with the thought, which isn't
Yeah,
really a
it's just
practice.
seeing.
So that's
You,
because I guess that's what I'm trying to realign here is just to go, I know the invitations are gonna play, and I'm
mm.
gonna fall for whatever, it's like there really isn't anything to do really.
No, it's just seeing that there's the option either to function from effortless being, the body of wisdom, where infinite love and infinite intelligence are present and will guide things for you. Or there's the option to step into the intelligence without the love and to entertain the conceptual realm, and have experiences of contraction. But it's really a simple choice. And the more you have experiences of alignment in terms of effortless being, then the options available in the dualistic realm don't become so attractive. You realize that it's because it's only like a half experience. There's the
Yeah,
conceptual aspect, but there's no enrichment there really. It's just on the conceptual level, which is quite it's quite bland.
yeah. Okay. So yeah, I guess there's like sense of lost at the question then is like, well, because I guess, and this is partly an invitation, I'm aware, but it seems to be a bit of both, is because when there was the first experience of the personal being,
Hmm.
there was more of a clear gap, or how do you say, like, yeah, well, a gap of sorts.
Yes.
But it's, but I can see how that game gap came across because the mind stream was just broken. So it's a bit like, if I go 100 kilometers in one direction and then I break that, it kind of bounces back the same direction backwards. And that's why I say, oh, I need a gap, but I don't actually need a gap. It's just that,
Yeah.
well, I suppose if you just cut thought like that, the whole thing, then maybe, but if that's not necessary, right?
No,
Does that make sense what the question is?
yes, it does because yeah, the concept of a gap it makes it that's an invitation because the
Yeah.
dualistic realm saying, well, actually, what you need is you need a gap between impersonal being and personalization because otherwise you're not going to notice the difference. But actually, the difference is really clear, and the one is kind of butted against the other, and it doesn't matter because you notice instantly, well, this one is expansion, this one is infinite love combined with infinite intelligence, and this one is just the conceptual realm. And it's a very simple distinction that needs to be made, and it doesn't require a gap to make the distinction. But it's entertaining to I think what you're enjoying, which is nice, is that you're seeing the way the invitations are working and how ingenious the dualistic realm is in taking the perceptions as they're arising moment to moment and then delivering invitations which are tailor-made to try to keep you engaged energetically. And it's so ingenious, but you've actually seen the way it's working and you can make that distinction. And it's actually quite fun then because it's like when it's a bit like in the film The Matrix when he realizes how powerful he is, and then before he's kind of battling to try to to be able to deter all the bullets and everything in the fights, but then he realizes how easy it is.
If there aren't any invitations playing, I don't know. Maybe.
Well, because you've seen that the invitations are optional because it's only on the basis of the energy that you've invested in them, which previously has kept them spinning. Now you've seen that actually you don't need to do that. So you can decide. The option really is, do you prefer to just have things quiet, or do you want to have a few little invitations coming in and you'll entertain them and have a little bit of fun with them?
Yes, I can see that.
Great.
So one weird last thing,
Okay.
maybe, because there's so much in the whole, I guess it's neo-Advaita, because
Hmm.
I'm not very good at meditating as well, I was, I don't know, I wasn't, whatever. But that is very anti-thought, right? But it's clear to me as I'm speaking now that, or it feels to me that I'm speaking now, right? That it comes out of silence in a sense. So
Yeah.
because there isn't a problem to thinking and conceptualizing seeing as it is. I mean, you can, right? But I mean, it's like because you could say in a way like everything I've spoken about here, right? I've thought about and analyzed in a sense. Does that make sense? So I mean,
It
obviously
does, yeah.
it can't be that it's bad.
No, well, what you could say is that the Neo Advaita is giving the sort of the absolute version only. So you can when you've become proficient in experiencing the dualistic realm on your terms, where you realize it's only ever been your energy which has fueled the whole game, then you can apply the Neo Advaita principles, which is that it's all just happening. But that can really only be an enjoyable experience when you've seen through the energetic implications of the game. But Neo Advaita doesn't reveal that. Neo
Yeah,
Advaita doesn't give the option of the distinction between expansion and contraction. It says, oh, it's all the beloved, it's all just happening, which means that you just continue to experience the contractions and limitation um, without having any respite. But it's, it's much more preferable to actually begin to understand the dualistic realm, realize that it's only your own energy which is fueling it, and then you can be selective in the way you experience it. And then once you've learned to be selective, it can be pretty automatic, which is the way it's described in Neo Advaita. When you've turned all the invitations off in the dualistic realm, you can live in the Neo Advaita version, really, which is where it's all just happening.
yeah, and I can see why that's why the wheel keeps spinning. In general, I'm speak from my own
Yeah,
experience, but because it's like, well,
yeah,
because in a sense, the first time it was a complete, I mean, almost a complete turn off, and
yes,
then it's like, oh, I need to get back to that, but wait a minute,
yeah.
because then it wasn't out. Well, it was yeah, whatever, but I can see how the whole thing becomes entangled and mushy because it's like you're trying to
But
apply the absolute to the relative and it doesn't work.
no, because when you had that experience, there was a complete energetic withdrawal from the dualistic realm. So you had the experience of the clarity without the dualistic realm running. But because the dualistic realm was potentially still active, because you didn't really understand fully how it works, then you were invited back in, and the energetic investment was back into the dualistic realm. And that's how it is for a lot of people. They have those experiences which they call glimpses, and then they think they've lost it, and then they've got to do a lot more seeking to try to get back there. But it's really just understanding how the dualistic realm works. Once you do, you realize that the dualistic realm is optional, and you can withdraw the energy, and then you can at will return to the level where the invitations aren't being delivered.
It's just so fascinating, it all in a way.
It's good fun, isn't it?
Because you end up in these really weird thought loops of like, which is almost like the person trying to get rid of the person, which is like it's silly.
Yeah, yeah.
No, I mean really, I don't feel like there's anything missing then in that sense. I mean, some of these stuff are already. I mean,
Everything's totally clear to you, and the you see the option between entertaining the dualistic realm or withdrawing your energy from it, and to experience things on your term and on your terms, and to realign with the infinite being, which is where the the content coming from your infinite nature is just much more enriching, and it has no upper limits. It can take you to the realms of infinite euphoria, bliss, synchronicity, creativity, boundlessness. Within unity, there are all possibilities. But the mind can never find those, because the mind by nature is a realm of limitation. But your infinite nature is like a theme park, which you gain access to, but you don't know what the rides are in there until you get in there.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Well, it's been great to speak with you. It's been great fun
Fun to
and
speak to you too, man.
great to see the clarity as well. Fantastic. But it's fascinating really because the clarity was already fully there really. It's just that there had been a little bit of entertaining. The mind had just kept the wheel spinning to a degree because it had noticed that there are certain things you enjoy, certain things about the way the mind functions which you enjoy. So the dualistic realm said, well, we'll just keep that running for a little while, and keep him energetically engaged, without him realizing that that's what he's doing. But it's become very simple.